think we'll get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for the famous last session, standing between you and a cold beer. I'm impressed that so many actually showed up, so thank you. My name is Joachim Jacobsen. I'm head of business development at Telenor AI Factory, and don't worry, I've been strictly told to not sell anything to you. So I'll try my best, but feel free to whistle if it becomes too salesy. I have a goal of today, and the first goal is just to make you guys aware of us. Telenor, of course, is something everyone knows, but it's mostly phones and fiber and that kind of stuff. But the AI Factory is a new company, and we're kind of doing something new that Telenor hasn't necessarily done before. And it comes a bit out of this changing landscape, especially in Europe, but globally as well. The regulations are rapidly changing. We have the EU AI Act that is being rolled out. GDPR has been going on for a long time. NIS2, DORA, etc., etc. There's a lot of stuff to stay in control of, and it's making it more difficult to navigate your technical choices and also infrastructure choices. I'll get a bit back to that. Geopolitically, we have a guy in the US that is making things difficult. I was watching the news yesterday, and my daughter asked, "Why is he orange in the face?" She's 4 years old, so she understood something, I think. And then, of course, we have operational things, and there's been a lot of talk about AI today on the model side, harnesses, but not so much on the infrastructure. My understanding of most of the talks has been focused on API-based access and then how you use the models, not so much on the hosting itself. But AI is, of course, on the lips of C-levels and leaders as well, and they are starting to ask the questions that you see on the bottom left. One of them is, where does the data live? Data residency. And then who operates the model or the infrastructure? And then, of course, for procurement, they care about jurisdiction for the contracts. So these are all questions that have come up internally at Telenor, and that we are also seeing with customers in Norway and the Nordics. And that's kind of the reason why Telenor AI Factory came into existence about 2 years ago. So what do we actually do? We buy GPUs currently from NVIDIA, who knows in the future. And then we host them. Today we host our GPUs, H100 NVIDIA GPUs, in a Telenor-owned and operated data center. By second half of this year, we'll be hosting in Skiga, which is a new co-location data center that Telenor owns 1/3 of, together with Hafslund and High-Tech Vision. And that's a very modern data center here in Oslo, focused on security and really on serving kind of the typical users that you see on the bottom left. Companies and organizations with strict security regulations that they have to operate under, or a preference for Norwegian hosted and controlled infrastructure. And then our idea is that we lease co-location sites. Initially Skiga, they are also expanding to more sites. So we have the flexibility to continue growing with them, but we can also expand on our own into other sites with the right level of security. And currently we are very much focused on GPUs and surrounding infrastructure, but we're not going to host full-on applications and migrate a full environment to us. That's not the goal. We want to enable the use of AI in a safe and controlled environment. And then you can connect it to where you host it today, if it's on-prem or Azure or AWS, where I used to work. So I like to throw that in as well. But you can have the flexibility. And you don't necessarily have to lock yourself into one model or one technology, if you will. So currently, the way we are structured in accessing our GPUs are these three main configurations. I like to kind of combine the two first, because GPU as a service, that's more, you have full control of the GPU in OpenShift. We use OpenShift as the layer in between. But what we see is that most developers and users prefer the AI dev as a service. That's OpenShift AI. So you have a lot more kind of ready-made. It's integrated with NVIDIA's NIM library, so you can press a drop-down menu and choose which model from their library to run, and then you just deploy. So it's quite easy to get started. And then last week we launched Model as a Service, which is API-based access to a selection of models that we are hosting on our GPUs in Norway with the same security standards that we have for the GPUs themselves. So you can please compliance and even legal can probably allow you to use this. And my hypothesis is that, especially based on what I've heard today, there's no question about AI being useful, especially to developers. There's also a lot of talk about the regular kind of chat functionality, but that's I think that's a longer step until we see real proper ROI that CFOs will kind of put 2 lines under the answer and confirm that it's worth the token investment. But for developers that are not necessarily able to use Claude Code or Open Code with frontier models today, they can be enabled to start also using agentic coding for these more secure use cases. I have some examples a bit later. I want to show you this slide first. The way we think about sovereignty in the AI factory, and this is kind of from the Telenor perspective, so there may be some differences in how you think about it, but if we start from the bottom, that's general public cloud, no specification where the data lives. You just use the infrastructure out of the box. Level 2 is where you specify where the data is located. So AWS has been doing this for a long time. Microsoft has added this as kind of a guarantee that your data won't leave the region that you put it in. And then lately, EU sovereignty has also come up a lot. Both Microsoft and AWS are offering this, which won't help you when it comes to the ownership and jurisdiction. Because even if it's a European company, the laws that put you at risk by using hyperscalers still apply to those EU sovereign setups, as far as I know. But some may disagree. I know Microsoft disagrees, and probably AWS as well. But there are also several EU based and owned kind of initial, or they're trying to become hyperscalers as well. So this is developing area. Then we have level 4, where we aim to be at when we are live in Shiga. So we're not there yet, but that's where we are going to be. And there you see, in addition to the residency of the data, of course, that needs to be in Norway. You have the full range of control. So even control plane, service continuity, if shit hits the fan and we become completely disconnected, we can still operate. And then, of course, fully Norwegian ownership and jurisdiction. Telenor will always be Norwegian, I think, unless something crazy happens. But Shiga also is going to be Norwegian. The third investor or owner is High-Tech Vision, but they have strict regulations in the contracts that they can't sell to a foreign country or a foreign entity to preserve the sovereignty goal that both they and we have. So we're kind of building on the same needs. And then here's a high-level architecture of our setup. Everything we build is based on Telenor's own defendable architecture, which basically is designed to make sure that everything we build is according to the Security Act, which regulates part of Telenor Norway's infrastructure. They're defined as a GNF, Grunnleggende Nasjonal Funksjon. So there are very strict regulations around certain parts of their infrastructure. And we aim to serve that need with GPUs. So they are currently using our GPUs for several use cases. One is agentic coding. I've heard anecdotally that developers have said at some point that if they weren't given access to some code assist or coding agents, they would leave the company. So they had this challenge, between using hyperscalers or the public cloud, or trying to build something that was good enough for the restricted parts of the data as well. So that's one use case. Another one is predictive maintenance, which is under the same regulation, because the data about our mobile towers is also, if you have the location of all the towers, you have a lot of information that can be used in a bad way if you're a bad actor. So that's under the same regulation. So until they had access to our GPUs, they could only do, even with the fully spec'd Max, they could only do quite simple analysis for the predictive maintenance. They could do about a year of history in the analysis. When they put more, the Mac crashed. On the GPUs, they got the results in 3.5, 4 years of history. They got results in a few minutes. So it changed the whole way that they could think about how they work. The one guy talking about this had a kind of a fire in his eyes when he was talking about it, because it was just a day and night experience for him. Then we have, until the end of June, we have an ongoing test project with DFÖ. You may know about their frame agreement with for public cloud. And the goal of this test project is to end up with something similar, making it easier for the public sector to buy GPU for these secure GPU use cases. So you see some of the organizations that are part of it here. Norges Bank is the actual Norges Bank, not Oljefondet, which have a leader that's very outspoken about using AI, but they're all in on public cloud. These guys are in a different spot. And then you have Riksadvokaten, for example. They needed a chat solution for their lawyers that could actually deal with cases that were normally blocked by guardrails. So obviously putting in sensitive data is an issue, so that was important for them. But also being able to actually put in, for example, if it's a case on child abuse or pedophiles, that kind of stuff can easily be guardrailed by the normal models. But then they needed to be able to put that in order to help them in the case work. So those are some examples there. Another one is a project we've done in collaboration with Capgemini. Basically Google Translate, but of course the data coming in is sensitive. So they've run a pilot with the Red Cross. And then and most of those conversations are about health or other topics that are very sensitive, and they can't legally and definitely shouldn't go into a normal Google Translate setup. So the kind of red thread about for all of these use cases is the sensitivity of the data and the need for control in both setting it up and also controlling as much as possible as you can in the models and everything. So some examples of a GPU as a service, which was the first kind of consumption model versus model as a service, I've tried to just summarize quickly. Of course, for sovereign coding assistant, for example, you can always use MaaS. But at some point, you may, and this is token-based, I'll show you the prices afterwards so you know. But at some point, you may actually cross over and see that it's more beneficial to host the models on your own GPUs rented from us, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of price. So that's why that's kind of optional. You can do both. So you have the full flexibility in doing that with us. Then I want to focus on agentic coding out of the box, if you will. Because as I mentioned, I think there's a lot of developers out there that would like to use open code or even cloud code at work, but they are not allowed. So they either do it as a shadow AI situation, or they are just frustrated and end up leaving the company, which is both a risk, from a people side, but it's also a big risk for the company and the data that they have. So I want to show, I'm not going to try any live demos. That's always dangerous. But here's a screenshot of a colleague of mine that set up open code with calling to one of our hosted models. Currently, we have 2 models hosted, Nematron Super, and we're probably going to upgrade to the Ultra pretty soon. And then we have a Qwen 3 Coder. So for now, those are the 2, but one key thing that we want to do with this beta testing is that we want inputs on which models are actually useful to you guys and what works, what doesn't work. And we are also learning a lot about how the models actually perform on our GPUs, because up until now we've had very limited data on that. So that will also help us develop the best possible setup and solution, so it can serve the needs for Norwegian and Nordic developers in this case, but also general business use cases. So you can use the coding tools that you are used to as long as they support changing the model call. Cloud Code, I believe, can do that with some configurations. Of course, as mentioned earlier today as well, that's optimized for Claude. So it may not perform as well as you would expect. So you may have to do some tweaks. Open code is, I think, better, and then there are other options as well that you can use. For now, everything is behind VPN for us. So both access to the dashboard to generate API keys and everything is behind VPN. You also have to be behind VPN to access the models via the API. We're working on making the API calls available without VPN, but that comes back to the security, and we want to make sure that everything is highly secure so that it can be used for the Telenor use cases that we have internally, and then of course also use cases that are out in the market, if you will. And then maybe I'm stating the obvious here, but I think some benefits and why it matters for developers is that this may help you to justify using it in an environment where you normally wouldn't be able to use a coding assistant as of now. Given the right kind of stamp of approval internally from compliance, etc., you can actually use real sensitive data. And this is, for example, the example I had with Riksadvokaten. They did a full rules analysis, which it went through. So, this is actually possible to do. We try to make it compliant by default. There's always or never any guarantees, but we strive to help make sure that everything can be compliant as much as possible. We are in the process of getting ISO certified 27001 initially, and then we'll add on with more as we go. You can keep your workflow mostly. You don't necessarily have to make huge changes in how you work. And then, of course, you can have as high as possible level of control and autonomy in how you work. We focus on open source. We want to create the highest level of portability is a big word, especially in the public sector. They don't want to be locked in. They have been locked into Microsoft for many years. And that's a big focus now all the way from Karianne Tung and further down, that they want to have less dependency on one vendor and especially reduce the dependency on American vendors, or Amtech, as I've heard a way of describing it. Not Amcars anymore, but it's Amtech. So these are the models that we're hosting today. These are the current token prices, input and output. That's what we have now. We don't have we have a KV cache setup. We haven't factored that into the pricing yet, partly because we don't know how it actually behaves. So as we get more data, we'll also kind of try to develop our pricing model to both. From my perspective, I want to make it fair so that you can actually see that there's an ROI in using this. We're of course seeing what other vendors are charging. So this is a bit compared to that, but we'll see where this ends up. And as I said, we will probably either launch Minimax M3 or Kimi K2.6 quite shortly, maybe in a week or so. But if you have any inputs on other models that you would like to see, I'm very happy to also take inputs on that. So we're very much focused on trying to get real data and real experience from the users. And initially, I want to focus on developers because I think you guys are the most advanced users of AI today, and we want to learn because we want to make sure that we are building something that is useful to Norwegian and Nordic developers. And just to say, Telenor AI Factory is set up as a separate company. So we're kind of like the AWS of Amazon. We're meant to serve, we will serve Telenor as a customer, but we are very much focused on also serving external companies. So we are not just an internal kind of GPU cloud that sells some extra GPU capacity to the market as well. That's what I have, but and then I have some time for questions, so feel free to shoot if there's anything. Yeah.
Most of the open models are Chinese.
Well, like I said, the models that we host, we only pull from the NVIDIA library. So they have done some initial screening, security screens. There will always be a risk, of course. I think the biggest risk is probably on the bias side, not so much on the models themselves, because we host the models locally. It's completely isolated from any Chinese players in that sense. So I think that risk is minimized. So it's more on the bias probably, but the bias problem you have with any model. Any other questions? Yeah.
What are the costs of using a local data center? Is it more expensive than using, let's say, Microsoft's data center? Or?
So on the GPU cost, we are comparable to Microsoft, AWS, and GCP, more or less. We sell all the way down to 1 GPU. It differs a bit how flexible they are. They tend to want to sell you 8, a full node. But if you just divide that price by 8, the cost is comparable. But it keeps changing. I did a benchmarking some time ago, and then GCP was significantly cheaper than the others. But then now it's changed. So it keeps changing. We want to be price us competitively, and then you, if we manage to keep that, you get sovereignty for free, more or less. And then in our price, everything is baked in, so we don't charge extra for egress. Storage is included. When you turn off, if you're on demand, we have on demand and reserved. If you're on demand and you turn off the GPU, you don't pay anything, even though we keep storing your stuff until the next session. So it's currently the model is quite lucrative, especially if you have large volumes of data.
I'm struggling a little bit to understand how would I use this as a developer. Let's say today I'm using Cloud Code, for example, and then down there I have choice one. So if I subscribe to you guys, I would get that model to use inside of that harness, or how would I use the...
Yes, exactly. So you can change the settings and, well, basically add our models to the models that you can choose from.
String or something that I will get, I connect there, and
yes.
Then the models are... So my developer experience would be unchanged, basically.
Yes.
Is it only open weights models that are possible, or can you talk to these large providers and get special allowance to host
yes.
models internally?
Good question. We are talking to some of them. Anthropic is not interested until we're bigger, I think. They're mostly focused on hyperscalers. Mistral, of course, is a company that we're been in dialogue with, or we are continually in dialogue. They need €1 million upfront to host anything on-prem. So that's a challenge. It's possible. And then, of course, you have the kind of benchmarking challenge. They're not really performing super well compared to the newest other or open weight models and frontier models. So the question is, do you want to use them? Is it that high of a value to use a European model and get lower performance? I don't know. But of course, if we have a use case where we can go to them, and I think this, once we have this model as a service up and running and at a pretty good level, we also have some negotiation power in going to Mistral. So we can go and say that we have 3 customers in Norway that really want Mistral. We can't pay you €1 million, but let's meet in the middle. So then we can do that. Technically, it's possible. No challenges. Yeah. I think people. Yeah.
The pricing model you showed that was token based, but what about the GPU as a service?
That we charge 100 kroner per GPU hour, and then 47,000 if you reserve per month. Kroner. I can send you also information afterwards. But those are the prices that are, at least last time I checked, comparable to the hyperscalers. So then you basically get sovereignty for free. But I think the reason I didn't show it here is that I wanted to show the model as a service. I think it's a lot easier to get started with that. You can start testing and qualify your use cases before you actually go and invest more in renting GPUs. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.